Emily Carter stepped off the old army bus with her duffel bag slung over her shoulder. The hot morning sun hit her face as she looked around the massive training ground of Fort Ridge Bootcamp. Soldiers shouted orders in every direction. Whistles blew, boots stomped on the dirt. It felt like a completely different world. For a moment, Emily just stood there, trying to take it all in. She had dreamed of this day for years, but now that it had arrived, her heart was pounding with nerves. She was smaller than most of the other recruits, thin, quiet, and with eyes that seemed too gentle for a battlefield. Around her were tall, strong men and women, all talking loudly, laughing, and showing off their confidence. Emily kept her head down, clutching her bag, hoping not to draw attention. But, of course, in boot camp, being quiet made you stand out even more. A loud voice boomed from across the field. "Move it, recruits. You're not here for a picnic." It was Sergeant Blake, one of the strictest trainers in the camp. Everyone quickly formed a line. Emily hurried to the end, standing as straight as she could. The sergeant's sharp eyes moved from one face to another until they stopped on hers. "What's your name, recruit?" he barked. "Carter, sir." "Emily Carter," she answered, trying to sound confident. The sergeant looked her up and down, clearly unimpressed. "You sure you're in the right place, Carter? This isn't a summer camp." A few recruits snickered quietly. Emily didn't respond. She kept her eyes forward. As the day went on, the new recruits were pushed to their limits. Push-ups, running drills, crawling through mud, the first day was designed to break the weak. Emily tried her best, but her body was already aching. During a run across the obstacle field, she fell face-first into the dirt. The group ahead burst out laughing. "Come on, rookie. You forgot how to walk," one of the recruits shouted. His name was Harris, tall and muscular, clearly the self-proclaimed leader among the trainees. Emily wiped the dirt from her face and forced herself to stand. She didn't reply. She just kept running, slower than the rest but determined to finish. Inside, she was fighting back tears. She had known this wouldn't be easy, but she didn't expect the laughter, the cruel jokes, the judgment. To them, she looked like someone who didn't belong. But Emily had her reasons for being there, reasons deeper than anyone could imagine. When night fell, the recruits returned to their sleeping quarters, a long barracks filled with bunk beds. The air smelled of sweat and metal. Everyone was tired, but still found the energy to gossip. Harris threw a pillow at another recruit and laughed. "I give that girl 3 days before she quits." A few others agreed. Emily sat quietly on her bunk, polishing her boots like the manual said. Her hands trembled from exhaustion. She could hear their words clearly, but she didn't react. Instead, she thought of her father, his voice echoing in her mind. "Courage isn't about being loud, Em. It's about standing firm when the world doubts you." She looked down at her arm, hidden under her long-sleeve uniform. Beneath the fabric, just above her shoulder, was a tattoo, one she had never shown anyone. It was old, simple, but deeply meaningful. It reminded her of everything she had lost and everything she was fighting for. Later that night, when the lights went out, Emily lay awake. Her muscles ached, and her mind kept replaying the day. She wondered if she had made a mistake joining boot camp. But deep inside, a voice whispered, "You belong here. You're stronger than they think." The next morning, before the sun had even risen, the whistle blew again. "Up! Everyone up!" shouted the instructor. The recruits groaned, but Emily jumped to her feet immediately. She didn't want to be late. As she stepped outside, the air was cold and fresh. The field stretched endlessly before her, and for the first time, she felt a small spark of hope. She started running with the group, slower than most but steady. Harris ran past her and smirked. "You really think you can survive this, sweetheart?" he mocked. Emily didn't even look at him. She focused on her breathing in and out, one step at a time. A few of the other recruits began noticing her quiet persistence. She never complained, never snapped back, and never gave up. Even when she failed at a drill, she tried again until she got it right. There was something different about her, something unshakable. When breakfast was finally served, Emily sat alone at a corner table, quietly eating her food. Across the room, some recruits whispered about her. "She's weird," one said. "Always silent. Always hiding something." Harris laughed and replied, "Yeah, maybe she's scared we'll find out she's in the wrong place." But if they had looked closely, they would have seen the faint edge of a tattoo peeking from under her sleeve. A mark that carried a story none of them could imagine. For now, though, Emily kept her secret hidden. She didn't need to prove anything with words. One day they would see who she really was. And when that day came, even the commander would fall silent. The second morning of training began before sunrise. The air was cold and filled with the sound of boots hitting the ground, shouts echoing across the field, and the sharp voice of the sergeant yelling, "Move faster, recruits!" Emily was already sweating, her arms sore from the previous day. Every muscle in her body ached, but she refused to slow down. She wanted to prove to herself that she belonged here, even if no one else believed it yet. The rest of the recruits were starting to show their personalities. Some were strong and loud, joking around even while running. Others complained under their breath, but most still kept going. Emily stayed quiet, eyes focused on the ground ahead. She didn't talk much, which made her an easy target. People didn't like what they couldn't understand. During one of the early drills, the recruits were told to climb a tall wooden wall. It looked simple until they tried it. Many failed again and again. When Emily's turn came, she stood there staring at the wall that seemed twice her height. Harris, the loud recruit who mocked her on the first day, shouted from behind, "Come on, Carter, don't be scared. Maybe someone can get you a ladder." The group laughed. Emily felt her face heat up, but she stayed calm. She didn't look at him. She took a deep breath and jumped, trying to grab the edge of the wall. Her hands slipped. She fell backward into the dirt. The laughter grew louder. "I told you," Harris said between laughs. "She's gonna quit before lunch." She didn't respond. She wiped the dirt off her face and tried again. One of the trainers yelled, "Keep going, Carter. You stop when I say you stop." So she jumped again and again until finally her fingers caught the rough wood. Her arms shook as she pulled herself up. Took all her strength, but she made it to the top. For a second, she sat there, breathing hard, looking at the sky. Then she dropped down the other side and continued the course. The laughter had stopped. Later that day, when everyone was given a short break, Emily sat under a tree drinking water quietly. A few of the other recruits were talking nearby. "Why doesn't she ever talk?" one girl asked. "Maybe she thinks she's better than us," another said. Harris chuckled. "Nah, she's just scared. She's not built for this." Emily pretended not to hear, but inside she felt the sting of their words. She remembered her father's voice again. "Never let their noise break your focus, Em. Silence can be stronger than shouting." She looked around at the others, sweaty, laughing, unaware, and promised herself she would never give them the satisfaction of seeing her angry or broken. When evening training began, it was time for team exercises. Each group had to carry a heavy log across a muddy field. It required teamwork, timing, and strength. Emily was assigned to the same group as Harris. As soon as she grabbed the log, Harris rolled his eyes. "Great," he muttered. "We're doomed." At first, the team struggled. Harris complained that Emily wasn't lifting enough. "You're slowing us down," he shouted. Emily didn't answer. She just pushed harder. The mud was thick, pulling at their boots. The log felt heavier with every step. "Come on," the sergeant yelled. "You think the enemy will wait for you?" Emily's arms trembled. Her uniform was soaked in sweat and mud. But when the others began losing grip, she shouted for the first time, her voice sharp and strong. "Don't drop it. Keep moving." Everyone froze for a moment, surprised at her tone. Then they listened. Together, they pushed through the final stretch and crossed the finish line, collapsing in exhaustion. The sergeant nodded. "That's how you finish, team," he said. Harris looked at Emily, breathing hard, unsure what to say. She gave a small nod and walked away. For the first time, a few recruits looked at her with quiet respect. That night in the barracks, the teasing continued, but it was softer now. Less laughter, more curiosity. "She's tougher than she looks," someone whispered. Harris shrugged. "We'll see how long that lasts." Emily lay on her bed, too tired to care. Her hands were blistered and her arms were sore, but a small smile touched her face. Every insult they threw at her made her stronger. She knew something they didn't. She had trained for this moment her whole life. Not for fame, not for attention, but to honor a promise. As the lights went out, she pulled the sleeve of her shirt slightly and touched the tattoo hidden beneath. It was a symbol that had belonged to her father's military unit. A unit most people didn't even know existed. Her father had told her stories about courage, loyalty, and sacrifice. And now those stories were guiding her every step. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, and rain began tapping against the barracks roof. Some recruits groaned, knowing that tomorrow's drills would be even harder in the mud. Emily closed her eyes, letting the sound of rain calm her. She whispered softly, "I can do this." She didn't need to prove anything to Harris or anyone else. Her goal was much bigger. She was there for a reason that no one could understand yet, a reason written in that tattoo she kept hidden. One day she knew they would all see the truth. But until that day, she would keep her silence, keep her strength, and let her actions speak louder than their laughter. And somewhere, far away, if her father could see her now, she hoped he'd be proud. The days at Fort Ridge Bootcamp grew longer and tougher. The early morning air was always cold, but the training field felt like fire by afternoon. Sweat, dust, and shouting filled every hour. Most recruits started getting used to the routine, joking during breaks and complaining about sore muscles. But Emily remained quiet, always focused, always apart from the crowd. She was polite but distant, like someone living in her own world. Every evening after training, when the others relaxed or laughed in the dorm, Emily would sit on her bed, cleaning her boots, folding her uniform perfectly, and writing short notes in a small notebook she kept hidden in her locker. No one knew what she wrote, maybe letters to her family, maybe her thoughts, but she never shared. The other recruits started noticing how she always wore long sleeves, even in the burning heat. The uniform allowed rolled-up sleeves, but Emily never did it. She even avoided the showers until everyone else had left. Her quietness had already made people curious, but this secretive behavior made them talk even more. One afternoon, during a short break, Harris and his group sat on the grass joking loudly. He pointed toward Emily, who was drinking water by herself under a tree. "Look at her," he said. "Always hiding. I bet she's got something weird under those sleeves." His friend laughed. "Maybe she's scared of a little sun." Harris smirked. "Or maybe she's hiding something she shouldn't." Their laughter echoed, and Emily heard them, but she didn't react. She just put down her bottle and walked back toward the barracks. Inside, she stood in front of a small mirror above her bed. Her eyes looked tired, but strong. Slowly, she pulled back her sleeve. On her shoulder was a tattoo, simple, but full of meaning. It was an old military emblem, a black falcon with spread wings and a number beneath it, 301. The ink had faded slightly, but it was still clear. She traced it gently with her finger. Her father had the same tattoo, the mark of Special Forces Unit 301, a secret rescue division that operated on classified missions years ago. Her father never talked much about it, but she remembered the pride in his eyes when he showed it to her as a child. When he passed away, she promised herself she would carry his legacy. But the tattoo wasn't just for memory. It carried a story few knew, and even fewer were allowed to speak about. Her father's unit had once saved the life of a high-ranking officer, someone who would later become Commander Reynolds, the man now leading this very boot camp. Emily knew if anyone saw her tattoo, questions would start. She didn't want attention, and she didn't want pity. She wanted to earn her place like everyone else. That's why she kept it hidden, her secret, her promise. That evening, as the sun dipped low, the recruits gathered for endurance training. They were divided into teams again, and Emily was once more paired with Harris. He didn't seem happy about it. "Just try not to slow us down this time," he said. Emily gave a small nod but didn't answer. The exercise was brutal. They had to crawl through wet mud, climb ropes, and carry heavy packs while being timed. Harris was shouting orders, trying to act like a leader, but halfway through his energy started to fade. The others were slowing down too. Emily kept going, breathing steadily, focusing on every step. When Harris stumbled and dropped his pack, she didn't hesitate. She picked it up and threw it over her shoulder along with her own. The instructor noticed but said nothing. By the end of the course, Emily crossed the finish line first. Her face covered in mud, but her eyes fierce with determination. Everyone watched in silence. Harris looked embarrassed. The sergeant blew his whistle and shouted, "That's what determination looks like. Recruits, remember it." The others began clapping. For the first time, Emily felt a quiet warmth in her chest. Not pride, but relief. She had earned a small piece of respect. Later that night, when everyone returned to the barracks, Harris walked past her bunk. For a second, it seemed like he might say something kind, but instead, he muttered, "You just got lucky today." Emily didn't reply. She continued polishing her boots, pretending not to hear. After lights out, when everyone was asleep, she pulled out the small notebook from her locker. By the soft glow of her flashlight, she opened to a fresh page and began to write. "Day 9, they still mock me, but it doesn't matter. Every insult reminds me why I'm here. Dad said strength is quiet, and I'm starting to understand what he meant. The harder they push me, the stronger I feel. I miss him, but I can feel him watching. I won't fail him." She closed the notebook, slipped it under her pillow, and looked up at the dark ceiling. Her body hurt all over, but her heart felt calm. She whispered softly, "I'll make you proud, Dad." Outside, a cool wind blew through the camp, carrying the faint sound of crickets. The night was peaceful, at least for now. What Emily didn't know was that her secret wouldn't stay hidden forever. The tattoo she guarded so carefully was about to change everything. And soon, even the commander himself would stand speechless when he saw it. But for now, she slept with quiet determination, unaware that destiny was already watching her, waiting for the moment her silence would speak louder than every word ever said against her. The next week at Fort Ridge was even harder than before. The instructors had doubled the training schedule, and the recruits barely had time to eat or rest. The mornings began before sunrise, and the drills went on until the sky turned orange with evening light. Sweat, pain, and shouting had become part of daily life. Emily's body ached constantly. Her hands were covered with blisters, her knees bruised from crawling through rocks and mud. Yet, no matter how tired she was, she never gave up. She moved quietly, kept her head down, and finished every task, even when her arms trembled and her lungs burned for air. But not everyone admired her effort. Harris and his friends still teased her, especially when she fell behind during long runs. "Come on, Carter," Harris would yell. "You're slowing us down again. Maybe you should go back home." The others laughed, their voices echoing across the field. Emily ignored them as always, but deep inside, the words started to hurt. She had learned to hide her emotions, but the constant mockery began to feel heavier than the backpacks she carried every day. Sometimes, when she was alone, she'd close her eyes and whisper to herself, "Just one more day. You can do one more day." One morning, the commander announced a special endurance test. It was known as the Iron Run, the hardest challenge in boot camp. The recruits had to run 5 miles through uneven ground, climb over fences, crawl under barbed wire, and cross a small river, all while carrying full gear. The goal wasn't just to finish. It was to show who could push past their limits. As soon as the whistle blew, everyone started running. The ground was rough, and dust filled the air. Emily ran in the middle of the group, focusing on her breathing. Harris, as usual, took the lead. "Keep up if you can," he shouted back with a grin. At first, Emily kept a steady pace, but soon her legs began to burn. The backpack felt like a mountain on her shoulders. Sweat dripped into her eyes, and her breath came in short gasps. Around her, other recruits were slowing down too, but no one wanted to quit. Halfway through the course, they reached the river crossing. The cold water shocked her legs, but she kept moving. The The mud sucked at her boots, trying to pull her down. Harris looked back and smirked. "Need help, Carter?" he mocked. "Or maybe you can just swim home." She didn't reply. She bit her lip, pushed harder, and climbed up the opposite bank. Her heart was pounding so loud she could barely hear the shouting anymore. Then came the rope climb, the part everyone feared. The rope hung high above the ground, swaying in the wind. Recruits were already slipping off, landing hard in the dirt. When Emily's turn came, she stared at the rope, her hands shaking. Harris stood behind her, smirking. "Don't worry," he said loudly. "We'll catch you when you fall." The group laughed. Emily grabbed the rope and began to climb. Her arms screamed in pain. Her palms burned. Halfway up, her strength gave out and she slipped, falling into the dirt. Laughter burst from behind her. "Told you," Harris shouted. "You can't even climb." For a moment, she just sat there, covered in dust, staring at the ground. The laughter echoed in her ears. A small tear rolled down her cheek, but she quickly wiped it away. She wanted to walk away, to disappear. But then, she heard a voice, deep, calm, and commanding. "Get up, soldier." It was Commander Reynolds. He had been watching the entire time. His tone wasn't angry. It was steady, like he believed she could still do it. Emily looked up at him. His eyes were serious, but not unkind. "You're not done until I say you're done," he said. She nodded slowly, stood up, and grabbed the rope again. This time she didn't think about the pain, the mud, or the laughter. She just climbed, one pull, one breath, one thought at a time. Her body trembled. Her fingers ached, but she didn't stop. Inch by inch, she made it to the top. When she finally touched the beam, she heard the sergeant shout, "That's it, Carter! Now move!" She slid down, landing hard but steady. The field had gone quiet. The recruits who had laughed earlier now stared in silence. Harris looked away, embarrassed. Emily said nothing. She simply picked up her gear and kept running toward the next obstacle. By the time she crossed the finish line, her whole body felt like it was on fire. She dropped to her knees, breathing hard. Commander Reynolds walked over and looked at her for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "You've got more heart than most soldiers I've trained. Remember that." Emily looked up, surprised. He gave her a small nod before walking away. That night, the barracks were quieter than usual. No one made jokes about Emily anymore. Even Harris kept to himself. Emily lay in her bed, her body sore but her heart calm. She finally felt like she had proven something, not to them but to herself. As she closed her eyes, she remembered her father's words again. Courage isn't about being the strongest. It's about standing up when everyone expects you to fall. She smiled softly in the dark. The pain in her muscles didn't matter anymore. For the first time, she felt like a real soldier. Outside, the wind blew gently across the camp. The night was silent, but inside Emily's heart, something powerful had awakened. The unbreakable spirit her father had always talked about. She had faced her breaking point and refused to break. And though she didn't know it yet, the commander who had told her to get up had seen more than just determination in her eyes. He had noticed something familiar, something that would soon uncover the secret she had been hiding all along. That night, after the iron run, Emily could barely move. Every muscle in her body screamed in pain. Her knees were scraped, her hands were raw, and her uniform was still dirty from the day's drills. She sat quietly on her bunk, staring at the floor while the other recruits talked softly around her. For once, no one laughed or teased her. Everyone had seen what she did, how she got up after falling and finished the toughest course in boot camp. Even Harris, who usually had something to say, stayed silent. He kept glancing at her, maybe out of guilt, maybe out of surprise. Emily didn't care. She was too tired to think. All she could feel was a strange sense of peace. For the first time since she arrived, she felt like she truly belonged. Later that night, just as she was about to fall asleep, the door opened, and a voice called, "Recruit Carter, report to the commander's office." The room went silent. Every head turned toward her. No one got called to the commander's office at night unless something serious had happened. Harris whispered, Oh, someone's in trouble. Emily ignored him, pulled on her jacket, and followed the officer outside. The cold air hit her face as she walked across the quiet camp. The sky was dark, filled with stars, and the only sound was the distant clanging of metal from the guard post. When she reached the commander's office, she hesitated for a moment, straightened her uniform, and knocked on the door. "Enter," came the deep voice from inside. Commander Reynolds was sitting behind his desk, reading some files. He looked up when she entered. His eyes were sharp but calm, the kind that saw everything without saying much. Emily stood at attention. "Recruit Carter reporting, sir." He nodded slowly and gestured toward a chair. "At ease, soldier. Sit." She sat down carefully, unsure why she was there. The commander studied her for a few seconds before speaking. "You showed impressive determination today," he said. "Most recruits would have given up after that fall, but you didn't." "Thank you, sir," Emily said quietly. He leaned back in his chair. "You remind me of someone I used to know," he said thoughtfully. "Someone who never quit, no matter how tough things got." Emily didn't know how to respond. Her eyes drifted to the medals displayed on the wall behind him, signs of a long, proud military career. Reynolds continued, "You came here alone, with no family background listed in your file. You don't talk much and you don't mix with others. But you have something: discipline, heart, and silence. That's rare these days." Emily kept her hands folded on her knees, trying to stay calm. "I just want to serve, sir," she said softly. The commander nodded. "Good answer." He stood up and walked around the desk. "But tell me something. What drives you? I can see it in your eyes. You're not here for medals or glory. You're here for something else." For a moment, Emily didn't say anything. Her heart started pounding. She couldn't tell him the truth, not yet. The tattoo on her shoulder, the one she kept hidden, carried her reason. Her father's legacy, the promise she made, all of it was part of who she was. She finally said, "I just want to make someone proud, sir." Reynolds looked at her for a long moment, as if trying to read her thoughts. Then he nodded again. "That's a good reason," he said quietly. "Dismissed." Emily stood up and saluted. As she turned to leave, her sleeve slipped up slightly as she reached for the door. The commander's eyes caught a glimpse of something, a black mark on her upper arm. For a second, his expression changed. "Carter," he said sharply. Emily froze and turned back. "Sir." "Your arm," he said slowly. "What's that marking?" She quickly pulled down her sleeve. "Nothing, sir. Just an old tattoo." Reynolds's eyes narrowed. "Show me." Her heart raced. She hesitated for a second, then silently rolled up her sleeve. The light from the lamp fell across her shoulder, revealing the tattoo. A black falcon with spread wings and the number 301 beneath it. The room went silent. The commander stared at it, his eyes wide. He stepped closer, his voice quieter now. "Where did you get that?" Emily swallowed hard. "It belonged to my father, sir," she said softly. "He served in Special Forces Unit 301. The commander blinked, stunned. He knew that symbol, he would never forget it. Years ago, that same unit had saved his life during a rescue mission. The man who led that mission was Sergeant Major Daniel Carter. Reynolds took a slow breath. "Your father was Daniel Carter?" "Yes, sir," Emily said, her voice trembling slightly. "He never talked much about his missions, but I know he served under this symbol. I got the tattoo after he passed away." For a long moment, the commander said nothing. His eyes softened, and his voice lost its strict tone. "Your father was a great man, Carter. Brave, loyal, and selfless. He saved more lives than most soldiers could ever dream of." Emily lowered her gaze. "He told me stories about his team, sir. About courage and never giving up. I wanted to follow his path, even if people laughed at me for trying." The commander nodded slowly. "You've already started proving that you belong here. You've got his strength. I saw it today." He paused, his voice quiet but firm. "From now on, you'll train under my direct supervision." Emily looked up in surprise. "Sir." He smiled slightly. "Consider it A promise I made a long time ago. As she saluted and left the office, her heart felt lighter than ever. The same man her father had once saved was now watching over her. When she returned to the barracks, the camp was dark and silent. She lay down on her bed, still feeling the commander's words echoing in her mind. For the first time, someone had looked past her quietness and seen her true strength. Outside, the wind moved softly through the trees. Emily touched her shoulder where the tattoo rested. Her secret was no longer just hers, it had been recognized. What she didn't know was that from this moment on, her journey at Fort Ridge would never be the same. The commander's silent respect for her father was about to become her greatest protection, and her biggest test. The next morning, the camp woke up as usual to the sharp sound of the whistle and the cold bite of dawn. But something had changed, at least for Emily. Her body was still sore, but her mind felt different. Stronger, lighter. The meeting with Commander Reynolds the night before kept replaying in her head. He knew her father. He knew the story behind the tattoo she had hidden for so long. For the first time since arriving at Fort Ridge, she didn't feel completely alone. Still, she didn't want anyone else to find out. The tattoo, her father's name, her connection to the commander. It all had to stay quiet. She didn't want special treatment. She wanted to earn her place like every other soldier there. During morning drills, the commander stood near the field, arms crossed, watching the recruits closely. Emily could feel his gaze every now and then, but she didn't look up. She just focused on her movements, perfecting every push-up, every sprint. The others didn't notice the commander's subtle attention toward her. Not yet. By midday, rumors began to swirl. A few recruits had seen Emily leaving the commander's office late at night. Harris, always looking for something to mock, whispered loudly during lunch, "Hey Carter, what did you do to get called to the commander's office? Must be nice to get special treatment." A few others chuckled. Emily kept her head down and continued eating, pretending not to hear. But inside, she felt that familiar sting of embarrassment. Harris wasn't just rude, he was jealous. He didn't like that she was getting noticed for her hard work, not for her size or strength. After lunch, the commander called everyone to the parade ground. His voice was deep and commanding. "Listen up, recruits. I've seen weakness, I've seen strength, and I've seen real heart. Some of you are here for the uniform. Some of you are here for the pride. But there's one among you who's here for something greater." The crowd went quiet. Harris looked around, trying to guess who he meant. The commander continued, "Last night, I was reminded of something, of someone. Years ago, in a battlefield far from here, a soldier saved my life. He carried me out of enemy fire when I thought I was done for. That man's name was Sergeant Major Daniel Carter." The air seemed to freeze. Emily's heart began to pound. The commander turned his gaze toward her. "And standing before you is his daughter, Recruit Emily Carter." A wave of whispers spread through the crowd. Heads turned. Even Harris's mouth fell open in shock. Emily stood frozen. She hadn't expected this. The commander gestured for her to step forward. Slowly, she walked out from the line, her hands trembling slightly. The commander nodded to her. "Show them." She hesitated, then rolled up her sleeve, revealing the tattoo. The black falcon with the number 301 beneath it. The sun glinted off the ink, and for a moment, the entire camp went silent. Commander Reynolds spoke again. "This mark isn't just a design. It's the symbol of Unit 301, a classified division known for its courage and sacrifice. Her father carried this same mark, and so does she. You all mocked her for being quiet, for being small. But what she carries is a legacy greater than any of you can imagine." Emily lowered her arm, her heart beating fast. She didn't know where to look. The same recruits who laughed at her now stood speechless. Harris's face turned red. He wanted to disappear. The commander's voice softened. Carter never once used her name or her past to get ahead. She fought through every insult, every hardship, and never complained. That's the kind of soldier this army needs. He turned to the group. "You can learn from her. Respect is earned, and she's earned it." For a long moment no one spoke. Then, slowly, one of the recruits began to clap. Then another, and another. Soon, the whole camp was applauding. The sound filled the field. Emily stood there, her eyes glistening with emotion. She wasn't used to this kind of attention. Felt strange, but it also felt right. Harris finally stepped forward. He looked down, shame in his voice. "Carter," he said quietly. "I didn't know. I shouldn't have said the things I did. You're tougher than all of us." Emily gave him a small nod. "It's okay," she said softly. "You didn't have to know. I wanted to earn it myself." The commander smiled slightly. "That's exactly what you did," he said. "Now get back to training, all of you. And remember, courage doesn't shout. It shows." The recruits scattered, whispering among themselves. Harris walked beside Emily for a moment, still embarrassed. "You really never said anything about it," he muttered. Emily shrugged. "It wouldn't have mattered. You have to prove who you are, not just tell people." For the rest of the day, the energy in camp changed. The teasing stopped. When Emily ran, others ran with her. When she trained, they pushed harder, inspired by her quiet determination. The once isolated girl had suddenly become a symbol of strength. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily sat outside the barracks, watching the sky turn shades of gold and red. The commander walked by and stopped beside her. "You did well today," he said. "I didn't do much," she replied softly. "You did." Reynolds shook his head. "You did everything. I just made sure they saw what I already knew." Emily looked down at her tattoo, tracing it lightly with her fingers. "He saved your life, didn't he?" The commander nodded. "He did. And now, in a way, you've reminded me of the kind of soldier he was." She smiled faintly. "He used to say that bravery isn't loud. It's quiet like breathing. You just keep going, no matter what." Reynolds looked at her proudly. "And you've proven that to everyone here." As he walked away, Emily sat for a while longer, feeling the cool breeze against her skin. The sky above was darkening, stars beginning to appear one by one. For the first time in years, she didn't feel the weight of her secret anymore. It was no longer something to hide, it was something to honor. Her father's memory, his courage, and his legacy now lived not just in her tattoo, but in her actions, her silence, and the respect she had finally earned. And from that day on, the recruits at Fort Ridge would never look at her the same way again. After that unforgettable day, everything at Fort Ridge changed. The atmosphere felt lighter, different, especially for Emily. The same people who once laughed at her now treated her with a kind of quiet respect. When she walked into the training yard, conversations would pause, and people would nod at her with admiration. It wasn't about fear or pity. It was genuine respect for someone who had proven her worth through pain, silence, and strength. Even Harris, who used to mock her every chance he got, had changed. During the next morning's drill, he stood beside her without a word. When they began their run, he kept pace with her instead of racing ahead. After the 3rd mile, when Emily's boot got stuck in the mud, Harris reached out a hand to pull her free. She gave him a small smile. "Thanks," she said. He nodded. "Don't mention it. We're on the same team now." Those words meant more to her than he could ever know. For the first time, she felt like she truly belonged. Days passed, and Emily continued to train harder than anyone. Every morning, she was the first to arrive at the track and the last to leave. When others collapsed from exhaustion, she pushed through. She wasn't trying to show off. She simply couldn't stop hearing her father's voice in her head. "Keep going, no matter what." The commander noticed. Commander Reynolds often stood at a distance, watching silently. He didn't offer praise in front of others, but every now and then he'd give a small nod, a gesture Emily understood as approval. One afternoon, the recruits were told about their final test, the survival simulation. It was a 3-day field mission designed to test everything they had learned: endurance, teamwork, and quick thinking. Each recruit would be assigned a small group, and they'd have to survive in the wilderness with limited supplies, completing a series of hidden objectives. The news caused a stir in the barracks. Some were excited, others were nervous. Emily, though, felt calm. She had faced worse, both in training and in life. When the commander read out the teams, Emily's name came last. Carter, Harris, and 2 others, your team Echo. Harris gave her a small nod. Guess we're stuck together, he said with a grin. Guess so, Emily replied, smirking slightly. On the first day of the mission, Team Echo was dropped deep into the forest. The sun was blazing, and the ground was uneven. They had only one map, a compass, and minimal food. Their task was to locate 3 checkpoints and return to base before the 3rd sunset. The group moved carefully through the trees. Emily led the way, using her sense of direction and calm focus. When others panicked about getting lost, she reassured them. We'll find it. Stay steady. By the end of the first day, they reached the first checkpoint, a small metal flag hidden near a rocky ridge. Harris clapped her on the shoulder. You've got some serious instincts, Carter, he said. That night, as they built a small campfire, the others fell asleep one by one. Harris stayed awake, staring into the flames. After a moment, he said quietly, I really was a jerk before. I didn't get it, what you were carrying. Emily looked at the fire too. You didn't have to, she said. It's not something I expected anyone to understand. He nodded slowly. Still, you earned my respect. Not because of your dad, because of you. Emily gave a small smile. Thanks, Harris. That means a lot. The next day was tougher. The forest grew denser, and rain began to fall. Their clothes were soaked, and their supplies were almost gone. At one point, one of the recruits sprained his ankle crossing a stream. Without hesitation, Emily and Harris helped him up, taking turns supporting his weight as they walked. It was slow, exhausting work, but Emily refused to leave anyone behind. We're a team, she said firmly. We start together, we finish together. Her determination inspired the others. Even through fatigue and hunger, they pushed forward. When they finally found the second checkpoint hidden under a fallen tree, everyone cheered. Not because they were close to finishing, but because they had done it together. That night, as thunder rolled across the sky, they took shelter in a small cave. The storm outside was fierce, wind howling like a beast. Emily sat quietly near the entrance, staring out at the lightning flashing over the forest. She felt tired, yes, but also proud. Every struggle, every insult, every tear, it had all led to this moment. She wasn't the weak girl they thought she was when she arrived. She was stronger than she had ever imagined. When dawn came, they began the final stretch back to base. The path was steep, and exhaustion hung over them like a heavy blanket. But when they saw the camp's watchtower in the distance, a wave of relief rushed through the group. As they approached the finish line, the commander was waiting with his usual stern expression. When Team Echo crossed together, Harris limped but smiling. The commander's eyes softened slightly. Well done, he said. Emily saluted, trying not to show how tired she was. Mission complete, sir. Commander Reynolds nodded. And completed with every member standing. That's what leadership looks like. Harris glanced at Emily, grinning. Yeah, that's our captain right there. Emily blushed slightly but didn't reply. Later, after everyone returned to their quarters, the commander called Emily aside. You've done something remarkable, Carter, he said quietly. You've earned not just respect, but trust. That's rarer. Emily looked up, her eyes shining. Thank you, sir. He smiled faintly. Your father would have been proud. She swallowed hard, trying to hide the emotion that suddenly welled up inside her. I hope so, sir. As she walked back toward the barracks, the sunset painted the sky in gold and crimson. The camp was alive with laughter and chatter, but Emily moved quietly, lost in thought. She had come to boot camp as a stranger, mocked and doubted. But now, she stood as a leader, a symbol of resilience. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was living in her father's shadow. She was walking in her own light, carrying his memory not as a burden, but as a strength. And though the final graduation was still a few days away, everyone in Fort Ridge already knew. Emily Carter wasn't just another recruit. She was the soldier who had turned mockery into motivation, and respect into legacy. The morning of graduation arrived with a crisp, clear sky. Fort Ridge was buzzing with energy, unlike any other day. Recruits lined up in perfect formation, their boots shining, uniforms spotless, and eyes straight ahead. Parents, family members, and officers filled the viewing stands, clapping occasionally, waiting for the ceremony to begin. Emily stood among her platoon, her heart pounding. This was the day she had worked for. Every struggle, every insult, every tear had led to this moment. She looked around at the other recruits. Some faces were familiar friends, others were former mockers now changed. Harris stood a few steps away, adjusting his uniform nervously. He caught her gaze and gave her a small, awkward nod. Emily nodded back. She didn't feel anger toward him anymore. All that mattered was that she had earned their respect and her own place. Commander Reynolds stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. The platoon fell completely silent. Every recruit straightened, knowing this was the moment of recognition. Emily's eyes flicked toward him. His face was serious, but there was a hint of pride in his gaze. "Today," he began, "we honor these recruits who have completed the most demanding training in the country. They have endured pain, exhaustion, and doubt. Yet they stand here today, stronger than ever." His voice echoed across the field. Emily held her breath. She had endured all of that, and yet this moment felt surreal. She had imagined it countless times, but the reality was far more intense. The crowd was quiet, hanging on the commander's every word. He walked slowly along the line, stopping in front of Emily. "And here stands someone who represents everything we train for," he said, his eyes meeting hers. "A recruit who has faced mockery, doubt, and physical limits, and has overcome every obstacle with quiet determination." Emily's heart skipped a beat. The other recruits shifted slightly, their eyes now drawn to her. Harris swallowed hard, looking genuinely impressed. The commander continued, "Emily Carter, your journey has been different from others. Some mocked you, underestimated you, and doubted your strength. But today you have proven that true courage is not about size, strength, or loudness. It is about perseverance, heart, and unwavering commitment." He gestured to her shoulder, where the black falcon tattoo lay hidden beneath her uniform. Emily slowly lifted her sleeve just enough for the top of it to peek through. The crowd gasped quietly, sensing the story behind it, even if they did not yet know all the details. "This symbol," the commander said softly, "represents a legacy of bravery and sacrifice. It was carried by a hero, a man who saved lives and inspired generations. And now, his legacy lives on in his daughter, standing before us today." Emily's eyes filled with tears. She had never imagined her secret would be revealed in such a way, yet it felt right. The pride, respect, and admiration from the commander and her fellow recruits washed over her. All the pain and struggle of the past weeks seemed worth it in this one moment. The commander stepped back and saluted her. "Sergeant Major Daniel Carter's daughter has shown us that courage is inherited, but it is also earned. Today, Emily Carter is a soldier who has earned the respect of her peers, her leaders, and herself." The platoon erupted into applause. Hands clapped, boots stomped, and voices cheered. Some recruits wiped tears from their eyes. Harris stepped forward and extended his hand. I underestimated you, Carter. You're incredible," he admitted. Emily shook his hand firmly, smiling. "Thanks. We made it together." The rest of the ceremony continued, with medals pinned and badges awarded. Emily's name was called last, as was traditional for the platoon leader to speak last. She stepped forward, saluted, and received her badge of honor. For a brief moment, everything around her seemed to fade. The mud, the sweat, the laughter, the pain. Only the pride and the memory of her father remained. After the ceremony, as the platoon stood in formation one last time, Commander Reynolds approached her quietly. "Your father would have been proud," he said, his voice low but sincere. Emily looked up at him, her lips quivering slightly. "I hope so, sir," she whispered. He nodded. I don't think there's any doubt. You've shown every recruit here what real courage looks like. Keep carrying that, Carter. Not just today, but every day you serve." Emily swallowed, holding back tears, and saluted one final time. As she walked back to her platoon, the sun glinted off her badge, casting a warm glow on her shoulder. The black falcon tattoo was still there, hidden from most, yet now carrying even more meaning. A symbol of her father, her journey, and the strength she had proven to herself and everyone around her. For the first time in her life, she felt completely whole. She had entered boot camp as the quiet, underestimated girl. She had endured pain, ridicule, and self-doubt. And she had emerged as a soldier, respected, admired, and proud. That day, as the platoon marched off the field, Emily felt a quiet smile spread across her face. She had turned every mocking word, every challenge, and every doubt into motivation. She wasn't just Emily Carter anymore. She was a symbol of resilience, determination, and the quiet, unshakable courage that her father had passed down to her. The other recruits who had once laughed at her now looked at her with admiration. Commander Reynolds watched her with pride. And somewhere deep inside, Emily knew that no matter what challenges came next, she had the strength to face them. The girl who was mocked at boot camp had become a soldier, a true soldier, and the story of her courage would stay with everyone who witnessed it.